Hi everybody. Today for this fly tying video, I'm going to be tying a very traditional fly called the Dark Bloa. This is a fly that really comes from a very historical sense whenever we're talking about fly fishing, and that deals with spiders and soft hackles. I was at a fly fishing show last year with my Uncle John, my buddy Don, and a couple other guys, and while I was there I took part in a fly fishing seminar that revolved around soft hackles. I thought I knew a little bit about soft hackles, but it turns out there's really a lot that I don't know about them. One of the recommendations from this seminar was to purchase a book called A Guide to North Country Flies. The book is written by Mike Harding, an excellent book, gives you lots of tips, techniques, just basically an understanding of where soft hackles and spiders came from and some current ones that you can tie, while there's also a lot of traditional ones that still work. The fly I'm going to be tying today is a very traditional one. It has pearsall scarlet silk for a body and for the thread. It consists of black hen fibers for the legs, and finally there's starling primary feathers used for the wing. I'm not going to show you the starling bird itself. One of my biggest YouTube fans, my cousin Helen, probably wouldn't approve of me showing you the actual bird, but I will show you the feathers that I used and a couple more of the tips and techniques that I have for you while tying this fly. I'm going to give you a quick look at one of the flies that I've tied already. I'll go through some of the materials, then I will tie this pattern. So thanks again for watching my YouTube channel, and feel free to leave any comments or questions after watching this video. Thanks. Here's a look at the finished Dark Bloa. Just a couple things to notice from this fly. First of all, we have our red body. This is a body tied out of silk. Very, great material, very traditional thread used for the body on this this spider / on this North Country winged fly. Next, as I tie up, you'll notice the next thing that I tied in was the legs. This is just tied out of a darker, a black hen hackle. And then finally we have for the wing some starling. It comes from a primary feather. This is not the easiest feather to tie on. If you're not too familiar tying on quill wings, this one may be a tad difficult to use the starling. For this pattern, traditionally it is tied with the starling. If you're not used to tying with starling, I would recommend possibly going to a wood duck wing or something along those lines, just to make it a little easier on yourself. Sometimes these fibers can be kind of sensitive and they will tear or cut, so I would recommend trying something else. Also, this is a down eye hook. Again, that's a very traditional hook tied for this type of a pattern. So this is just a quick peek at the materials. I'll place them up on the screen for a second so you can look at them, write them down. Feel free to pause this video if you need to write any of the materials down, even though there's only a few for this one, and then I'll tie this fly. Alright, let's get started tying this fly, the Dark Bloa. I'm going to start with some pearsall's scarlet colored thread on a size 14 down eye hook. This is pearsall's. If you're going to notice, I'm not going to be cutting off my tag until I'm about halfway down. I'm going to build a nice foundation up, but also make sure that this fly has just a little bit of a taper to the body. I'm going to continue with my thread down to directly above the we'll say the barb, or where the barb would be, because this is wireless, or because this is barbless. Then I may turn around and come back up. I kind of take my time when I'm tying with thread, because I want to make sure every part of that hook is covered, and I like to just see every wrap just lie over the previous one. When I get to a couple millimeters back from the eye, I'm going to stop, because that's about where I'm going to be tying in my legs. I want to be careful when I'm tying in my legs, because I don't want them to crowd the hook eye. So I'll be tying them in, and I want to make sure that as I tie them in, the barbs come about 1 millimeter past the point of the hook. So I'll be using some dark hen. I'm going to grab around 8 fibers. No one's counting by any means, but somewhere around 8 is a pretty good number for this. I want to use a really very, I don't want to say a silky, but just a very soft feather, so that those legs can really move around the water when this fly is going through the water column. So I have my legs ready. I'm going to be placing them using a pinch wrap from the bottom, but I want to make sure that those tips are, again, just pointing at a downward angle towards the tip of the hook, and I want to make sure they just cover it. So I'm going to kind of lock it in place where I want them, bring my left hand over, and then do the pinch wrap, pulling up onto the hook. So again, let me lock these in. at the angle I like. There's my pinch, my lock, pull straight up, come around. Again, lock it, pinch, come straight up, and down again, and that's it. It's pretty ugly looking from the top looking down, but if you take a look at where the legs are, it's exactly where I want them, at that downward angle, just covering the point of the hook. Now I'm going to get these extra fibers out of the way. Because I want to leave room for my wing. I also don't want to build up the head of this fly, because when you're using silk, it can build up quite easily. Okay, I'm going to go back over these one more time, just to ensure that everything has that nice red color to it. Then I'm going to stop. All right, next I'm going to be taking these the fibers from the starling primary feather. I'll show you a couple starling primary feathers. Again, I'm not showing you the bird. Helen, you know I wouldn't. So these are the feathers. The way that they're going to be tied in, if you kind of picture the outside, and I'll be taking the outside of one of these. This is the outside of one of the feathers. So imagine me turning the feather upside down, so that this end that goes towards the tip will be facing the back. So it's going to kind of be like over it that way. Here's those feathers again. These are the outsides. The insides of them will be facing each other. And that slanted part will be kind of going towards the back, if that kind of makes sense. If you need to stop the video to kind of get the gist of that. But that's what's going to be going on. I already have a section of these feathers cut out. And I don't tie with quills that much, but I do know whenever I tie a type of fly like this, I really feel like I take a large section of feather out. And it's typically because this top section, the tips of the feathers, they really seem to bunch together when you're tying this fly. And though the butt section of the feathers is really significant, you're really going to be, cutting a lot of that off, and it's getting just captured underneath that thread, so it's not that big of a deal. All right, I already have mine cut, so I'm going to make sure they're placed on top of each other. I'm just going to do this in my fingers because it only takes a second. So they're ready. I have them. I'm going to be placing them directly on top and then employing the pinch method that I've showed in a previous video. So they'll be sitting similar to this. I'll cover them up for a second. I'll go straight up, pinch, go down, and I'll complete that approximately 3 times. So here we go. So it's up. There's the pinch, straight down. It's 1, 2, and 3. That's it. All right, now if you notice, the head is really just has feathers or fibers all over the place. So I'm going to take my time to trim these away, because again, I don't want to build up the head of this fly. Don't worry if while you're doing this that any of the wings become unmarried. It'll be very simple to marry them back together. I think I have one more fiber in here I want to trim away. Okay. Now that I have that fiber trimmed away, I could play around with the feathers a little bit if they need tweaked, but from my perspective, they really don't need tweaked that much. So I'm simply going to finish the head of the fly. I want to make sure I cover up all of those fibers from all around. I'm going to go with 1/2 hitch. Looks fine. Then I'll go with my final whip finish. Okay. Trim this out of your way. Alright, after I have this trimmed, now if I'm just quickly examining this fly before we finish this video, I can play around with these feathers a little bit if I want, but for the most part they really look okay. This feather over here may have become unmarried a tad, but it's nothing. I can simply just marry that back together by playing around with it a little bit. I won't do that too much to take away from this video. But if you are examining this fly, now taking a peek at it, we have that nice silk body. We have these really soft fibers that are coming out as legs that will really just be playing around in the water. And then finally we finished off with that starling wing, using that quill wing for the wing of this fly. For the most part, this fly it's a really neat looking fly. It's a very classic, traditional fly. A lot of people recommend using it earlier in the season, and I would definitely do the same. This is that old-timer type of fly. So if you're into that thing, and if you're into looking into flies like this and really using spiders and these North Country wing flies, I highly recommend tying a few of these Dark Bloas. Again, don't worry too much about the wings. They're not the easiest things in the world to tie. If you don't want to shoot with starling right away, and if you'd rather jump to an easier wing material such as duck, yeah, go for it. And I definitely recommend becoming comfortable tying those wings in first with something else, and then jumping to something that may be a little more difficult like this starling, since it tends to be a much more delicate fiber. All right, as always, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate all the comments that you've given me related to the flies that I've been tying. You're more than welcome to email me at tcammisa@gmail.com, and feel free to leave any comments or questions on this website. Thanks as always for clicking the like button. That really tells me that I'm doing a decent job so far illustrating and describing how to tie these flies. Thank you again.